Natural selection and speciation. Modes of natural selection. There are three modes of natural selection: stabilizing selection, disruptive selection, and directional selection. Stabilizing selection. Stabilizing selection favors intermediate variations and reduces variation in a population. For example, human birth weight. Medium-sized babies are the healthiest because small babies get sick and lose heat easily, and large babies are difficult to deliver. Directional selection. Directional selection favors one of the extreme variants in a population and occurs when there is an environmental change or when individuals of a population migrate to a different environment. For example, the peppered moths. On dark tree bark, natural selection favors dark over light-colored moths. Click here for a peppered moth simulation. Disruptive selection and speciation. Disruptive selection favors the extreme and leads to increased variation. Speciation occurs when this variation is so great that a new species is created. For example, bird seed and beak size. If only small and large seeds are available, natural selection favors members of the population with extremely small or large beaks. Punctuated equilibrium. Most evolution is gradual, small changes over long periods of time. But in some cases, new species can appear or disappear suddenly. This type of evolution is known as punctuated equilibrium. This usually happens in a cataclysmic event, like there's a comet or something that causes an extreme environmental change. In this case, evolution has happened very quickly. The sudden appearance or disappearance may not be as sudden as thought. Speciation may have occurred during time periods too short to be distinguished in fossil layers. Because remember, fossil layers form over long periods of time. If it happens quickly, even a couple hundred years instead of 1,000, it may be too quick for this to appear in the fossil record. Speciation. Members of the same species share a common set of genes called a gene pool. This means genetic change in one individual can spread through the population by interbreeding. For a new species to form, members of a population must become genetically separated from one another until genes can no longer flow between them. Causes of speciation. How do populations become reproductively isolated from one another so that the genes cannot flow between them? There is behavioral isolation, geographic isolation, temporal isolation, and mechanical isolation. Behavioral isolation. Behavioral isolation occurs when two populations are capable of interbreeding, but have behaviors that prevent mating. Some species of crickets are physically identical, but can be distinguished by the fact that females will only respond to the mating songs of males of their own species. Males of other species are ignored. Geographic isolation. This occurs when two populations are separated by geographic barriers like mountains or bodies of water. Take, for example, the Grand Canyon. There's different species of squirrels across the canyon because they can no longer interbreed with that canyon. And islands are separated by bodies of water. So take, for example, the Galapagos Islands. Perhaps this is one reason why Darwin was able to observe species that were so much different from each other on different islands, more different from each other than they were from their ancestral species. Temporal isolation. This occurs when two different populations mate at different times. Two populations of plants may produce flowers in different seasons, making mating between the populations impossible. For example, the winter pansies flower during the winter, and the summer pansies flower during the summer. Another example are frogs. Different species of frogs will mate at different times during the spring and summer. So a frog that mates during the spring will not mate with a different species of frog that mates during the summer. Mechanical isolation. This occurs when the sexual organs between members of closely related yet different species do not fit together. For some different and physically incompatible species of fruit flies, interbreeding can result in injury or death.